What's going on, guys? Billy here, and over the past couple of months I've really enjoyed checking out these different portable power solutions because as somebody that flies drones almost every single day, bringing portable power with me is a must. Now, the drones that I fly are a little bit more power hungry, so we've got batteries from like the Mavic 2 Pro, the Air 2S, as well as the Phantom 4 Pro, and you just can't charge those off of a smaller power bank that only has like USB-A ports or USB-C ports. Instead, you need a full-sized AC outlet like one you would find in the wall, and that's why a power station like this one from EcoFlow is the perfect option. Here's the thing though, most of the big power stations that I reviewed on this channel just can't match the quality of EcoFlow's product. When they reached out asking if I wanted to review the River Pro here, I was genuinely excited because I thought of them as like the Apple of the big beefy power station market. In other words, I knew that what they offered in their product was top notch. So something that I always run into when I'm making a video about a battery, whether it's a smaller power bank or a larger power station like the River Pro here, is how does it stand out? What makes it different? And I get that a lot in the comment section too. It's like, this is a battery, it charges my devices, and as long as it can charge my devices, it pretty much accomplishes what every single other battery bank and power station is trying to do. And I agree. I mean, that's about 50% of the equation, right? All you want to do is charge your devices off of the battery that you're buying. But I think the River Pro has a couple of features that it offers that helps it stand out amongst all those other power stations on the market. So the biggest feature, I guess you could say, of these big power stations is the I/O. It's the port selection. This determines how the power from the battery can get to your devices, so it's one of the most important things to cover. The River Pro here has a very diverse selection for its size with a DC outlet, 3 USB-A ports, one of which can output power faster as indicated with a different label and a different color. It also has a USB-C port capable of delivering up to 100 watts of power. And now for my favorite part, the triple array of AC outlets located on the right side of the power station, capable of outputting 600 watts of power. It can actually reach peaks of over the 600 watt limit using what EcoFlow calls their X-Boost technology. So having 3 AC outlets here on the side of the River Pro is really great because I can power and charge multiple power hungry devices at once. So if I'm out flying in a group, I can share the power and everybody can have their own outlet as long as I'm not flying with more than 3 people. But I would say a more practical use if you're going to be alone and not with a group of people is being able to charge 2 drone batteries at once at full speed. So as you know, with like a Mavic 2 Pro battery hub, it charges one after the other, but instead if you've got 2 Mavic 2 chargers, you can charge 2 batteries at once at full speed. Now, at the end of the day, they're just AC outlets, right? Something that makes this special is it has 3 of them, but what I also like about EcoFlow is they took that very basic technology and they kind of upped the ante with their X-Boost technology. So on their website here, it says that they can actually boost that power from 600 watts all the way up to 1800 watts. Now, there is one small caveat. It says that you should use devices below 1200 watts for the best product use. And if we scroll down, there's actually some different scenarios, or I guess different examples of stuff you can power here with this device, like a blender, a television, a projector, hair dryer, coffee maker, you name it, it can be used here with the EcoFlow River Pro. Now, to give you a little bit of an overkill example here, I have a ton of stuff plugged in, all charging at the same time. I've got my MacBook Pro plugged into the USB-C port, I have my Air 2S controller, my Sony a7 III batteries, and my GoPro Hero 9 charging off of the 3 USB-A ports, and I have 3 sets of drone batteries charging as well, my Air 2S batteries, my Mavic 2 Pro batteries, and my Phantom 4 Pro batteries. Now, with all of this stuff plugged in, I'm outputting about 260 watts of power, and the battery predicts that I'll be able to continue this charge for roughly 2 hours. Now look, 2 hours of charging really isn't all that much, but remember, we were sucking out a serious amount of power all at once. So we had all the USB ports filled up, we had all the AC outlets filled up, and I think the only port that we didn't use was the DC outlet, but nonetheless, it's got a serious amount of capacity or a serious amount of energy stored inside. It's a 720 watt hour battery, and with that, it can get me anywhere between 12 to 15 extra flights, so 12 to 15 charges depending on the drone that I'm flying. It can also charge my MacBook Pro well over 10 times, and as for those smaller personal electronics like a phone, a camera, or even an action camera, we're talking between like 40 to 60 recharges. Now keep in mind that your mileage may vary with the devices that you personally own, but just know that there's a serious amount of power stored inside of this battery. Now, to take a deeper dive into this screen, the LCD panel features a lot of the information that we're used to seeing on other power stations, like the input and output power measured in watts, the remaining capacity left measured as a percent. But what I really like that EcoFlow does that I I haven't seen in any other power station is this countdown timer where it measures how much power you're using, how much power you're putting back into the battery, if any, and the remaining capacity to give you a rough estimate of how much more charging time you have left with all of those included variables I just mentioned. It makes figuring out how much more you can charge a lot easier with just a simple glance. So overall, the build quality of the River Pro is top notch. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, EcoFlow made a really great product here with the River Pro. It is relatively heavy, but I don't know what you'd expect from a large 720 watt hour battery. Regardless, they used high quality materials and plastics when building it, so it's all around well built device, battery, power station. It's well built. The one thing I do want to mention is that there is an expansion port on the side here. It almost resembles that of like a DVI cable found on older monitors and older computers. So if you want to plug in even more power to charge your devices, you can. But with my needs, I've found that the power inside of the battery itself, the power station itself, all 720 watt hours is perfect. But you might have higher power needs, power hungrier needs, so you can add more power if you need to. Now, this whole entire video, we've talked about charging other devices from the power station, but how do you charge the power station itself? Well, there's three different ways. You've got the wall, you've got your car, as well as solar. Now, you'd probably expect a battery of this size to take forever to recharge, but it's actually really quick. EcoFlow calls this their extreme charging method, which is capable of charging the battery from 0% all the way back to 80% in just 1 hour from your wall through an AC outlet. To get a full 100%, it'll take about an hour and a half, which still really isn't bad at all. Now, just to sort of catch everybody up and organize some of the information in this video, there's two major features that EcoFlow has put into their power stations that I would say make them stand out amongst the rest, one of which is the X-Boost technology and the other is the X-Stream charging capability. It's funny how they call it X-Stream. So basically, we're able to output more than 600 watts from the AC outlets and we can charge the battery up really fast. Those two things, in my opinion, make this a much better buy than some of the other power stations on the market because it just overall makes it more usable. Now, moving on here, if you're instead on the road looking to pick up some charge from your car, these times are going to be doubled, so you can expect a full charge in about 3 hours, which is still faster than some of these other power stations will charge from the wall in your home. Now, the final and probably most handy charging method that we have to get power back into the River Pro is of course solar. So I have EcoFlow's 160 watt panel here that is an absolute powerhouse. I mean, being able to put 160 watts of power back into my battery will likely outpace whatever it is that I'm charging, whether it's my drones or my other camera gear. Now, just to help you put into perspective how much power 160 watts is coming from that solar panel, a Mavic 2 Pro charger at its peak will output 60 watts. I think a MacBook Pro, the 13-inch, is about 67 watts, around that area. An iPad Pro, the M1 iPad Pro that I have here, is going to be around 55 watts I've seen coming from the River Pro. So just imagine this. You can charge two Mavic 2 Pro batteries at once. You can draw 120 watts of power. And if you are getting peak sunlight hitting your panel at 160 watts, you're actually going to be putting power into the River Pro and using only that solar energy to charge your drone battery. So having that solar panel really is incredibly useful. But I've got to say, it is an absolute nightmare to set up. Not only is it kind of annoying with the two different ports you've got to plug in to the one connector to the River Pro itself, but also the stand kind of sucks. There's no easy way to prop it up. It really is a huge struggle. And quite frankly, I just find myself laying it flat on the ground and taking the hit in that solar energy that's going to be hitting the panels and inputting into my River Pro because I just hate having to deal with the setup. Now, moving on here to further add to the list of functionality that EcoFlow has added to their River lineup of power stations to help it stand out. Remember, we had X-Boost, we had X-Stream, and we also have an application to monitor and charge our power station. And it's not one of those apps that was like a crappy afterthought that isn't updated frequently. It actually adds a ton of functionality. For example, you can control everything about the power station. So you can turn on the light, you can turn on the AC outlet as well as the DC outlet. You can also monitor your remaining charge and the amount of power coming in as well as going out. But perhaps my favorite part of the app are through these submenus towards the bottom that allow you to dig deeper into the settings by choosing your maximum battery capacity so that you can limit how much power it charges up to preserve the life of the battery. You can also select the standby time. You can turn on quiet charging so that the fans never kick on when charging, although it is going to charge a little bit slower. You can even update the firmware. I mean, there is so many many things that you can change under the hood about this battery that you just couldn't if you didn't use the app. Overall, EcoFlow's River lineup of power stations really does stand out in a fairly saturated market where companies are trying to put out the biggest and baddest battery with the most amount of ports, and I think that EcoFlow checks off both of those boxes. It's a massive 720 watt hour battery that's going to get you through most days unless you really use a lot of power on the daily, but also it lets you charge up almost anything that you need to with the 3 AC outlets as well as a very diverse selection of USB ports on the front. Maybe I wish they put more USB-C ports than USB-A ports, but that's something that I can look over for the sake of this review. But I think where EcoFlow really stands out amongst having that diverse port selection and the big battery is the 3 main features I mentioned in this video. The extreme charging technology, so it charges up really fast. The X-Boost power technology, so you can let the power fly out for those power-hungry devices. And the app, right? The app is really helpful if you're trying to monitor or control your device on the go. Now, to close this video off, I want to touch on something that to me is very important, and it is safety, right? When you're charging any battery, but especially a battery of this size, safety is a very big concern because there's been houses that have burnt down from battery fires. I mean, even these small drone batteries, if something goes wrong, it can spark a fire in your house and it could burn the entire thing down. And that's not something that you want to do. Now, luckily, DJI puts out these intelligent flight batteries, so they auto discharge, they monitor their voltage during flight so that the drone doesn't come falling down from the sky. They also stop charging once they're full, so it's an intelligent flight battery. And this is also intelligent. So I'm going to read right off of their website some of the safety features about this power station, right? BMS, over voltage protection, overload protection, over temperature protection, short circuit protection, low temperature protection, low voltage protection, over current protection. There are so many fail-safes built into this battery that I feel safe charging it even when I'm not in the same room. And that's something that you really want to consider when thinking about picking up a battery station or power station. And I think that this battery here in the River Pro from EcoFlow is the best that you can buy for the price right now. So if you guys are interested, I'm going to leave a link down in the description to pick this up, pick up the River Pro. You can also check out some of these smaller River power stations if you don't need all this power and you want to save a little bit of money. There's those to check out as well. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.